The holiday season is a time to gather with friends and family. Whatever traditions you observe or celebrate, it's often seen as a time of warmth and happiness. But for some like George Bailey, it's met with sadness and reflection. His story begs the question, how can we know the impact that our lives have on the people that surround us? And if we could know that impact, how would that change our own perspective? This year marks the 75th anniversary of Frank Capra's 1946 masterpiece, It's a Wonderful Life, a film that garnered the love and admiration of many over the years since its initial release. Its themes of purpose, sacrifice, faith, and most importantly community found resonance with audiences all over the world and have cemented its status among the best holiday films of all time, and personally, my favorite movie of all time. It's a Wonderful Life tells the story of everyman George Bailey, played by Jimmy Stewart, who feels that his life has amounted to nothing until he is visited by his guardian angel, Clarence, played by Henry Travers, who shows him just how impactful his life has been. In order for George's action to have the weight for the emotional finale, it was necessary for Capra, alongside writers Francis Goodrich and Albert Hackett, to flesh out the original short story, The Greatest Gift, by author Philip Van Doren Stern, from the ground up. Capra and company realized that in order for the ending to really pay off, to really hit home, they had to make you care about George Bailey. We're in the same seat as Clarence, who is getting his own lesson on George so he can effectively help him later on in the film. Heaven feels a lot like the small town that George grows up in.
Looks like we'll have to send someone down. A lot of people asking for help for a man named George Bailey.
Everyone's looking out for each other in some way, leading perfectly into Clarence's introduction. Like, what a fucking brilliant way to make the expository aspects of the film be interesting. By the time that George is wishing that he'd never been born.
What'd you say?
I said I wish I'd never been born.
We as the audience are absolutely heartbroken for him. There's no question as to why this story is happening. From here on, Capra tirelessly drives the point home as to why George Bailey is such a great character. Looking back at the last few years, I can't really remember a movie that has made me 100% back its main character like this. The only one that comes to mind is Peter Parker in Spider-Man 2. Sam Raimi actually might have taken some cues from Capra by doubling down at every conceivable moment in the film that Peter's life is full of sacrifice and that sacrifice will be painful. Holy shit. Is It's a Wonderful Life a Spider-Man movie? George is met with challenge after challenge, sacrifice after sacrifice, with each decision compounding as he continues to put the betterment of his town above his own desires. Throughout all the trials and tribulations, George maintains a calm demeanor, and Stewart's charisma shines through, winning us over instantly. Whether it's his loss of hearing in his left ear from saving his brother Harry from drowning, or the 3 separate times George gives up traveling the world in order to keep the Bailey building and loan running, George's impact on the people around him is undeniable.
Welcome home.
While he remains the center of the movie, It's a Wonderful Life is as much a story about the town of Bedford Falls and its residents as it is about George Bailey. Part of why I adore It's a Wonderful Life is due to how well fleshed out the setting feels. Like George, the audience never really leaves Bedford Falls. Over the course of the film, we become familiar with locations about town and the wonderful people that inhabit them. I can't name them all, but a few favorites of mine are Martini's Bar, owned by Giuseppe Martini, or even when the bartender Nick owns it in the reality where George is never born.
That does it. Out you 2 pixies go, through the door or out the window.
I mean, what a performance. Bert and Ernie, no, not those guys, these guys, are a hilarious duo who just seem to really latch on to George and have always been by his side. These 2 dweebs, one played by the alfalfa actor from the original Little Rascals, open up the gym floor, which leads to a giant pool party. It's an excellent way to flesh out the town and to add moments of levity that perfectly contrast the crushing lows of George's later life. It's also precisely why the experience of this other reality is so effective on both George and on us. The people that we've grown to love and that George has helped over the story are a dark reflection of themselves that have genuinely had their lives ruined, all because one man wasn't there. Now, I adore George and the residents of Bedford Falls, but my favorite character by far is Mary Hatch, played so goddamn well by Donna Reed. Donna Reed. Can you think of a warmer character in a movie? I mean, seriously, she eats this role up. George might be the main character, but Mary is the soul of this movie. Of course, I think it's worth mentioning that Mary's character does suffer from dated women character writing that plagued the 1940s. She's an unworking housewife whose sole interest in the movie is loving George. But I think Donna Reed brings so much to this role. She portrays the character with such kindness and serenity. It feels like a warm hug. I think Reed's chemistry with Stewart is unmatched. From their love at first sight moment in the gym.
If it hadn't have been for that race had been a cinch. I tried to find out who it was later, but I couldn't find out. Nobody'd ever tell you whoever it was.
To the walk home afterwards.
What do you want? You want the moon? Just say the word and I'll throw a lasso around it and pull it down. Hey, that's a pretty good idea. I'll give you the moon, Mary.
I'll take it. Then what?
To them having children.
Anybody else in town?
I didn't want to marry anybody else in town. I want my baby to look like you.
You didn't even have a honeymoon. I promised you. You what?
My baby.
Their relationship is one that you can see how they feed off of one another. They're each other's rock. In a movie so intrinsically tied to fate and faith, the relationship between Mary and George defines one of the key themes of the film. You have everything you need where you are.
Welcome home, Mr. Bailey.
I'd be remiss if I didn't take a second to talk about George and Clarence's relationship. Clarence's mission is to help George, but it's not a one-sided endeavor. Much like George, Clarence is down on his luck. He's an angel second class without any wings, and after 200 years,
People are beginning to talk.
their relationship is odd, but so is their situation. In place of a more traditional angel, Travers plays Clarence as a folksy, relatable man out of time. One of his first questions is,
What are they wearing now?
like George, Clarence is insecure, but ambitious. And I think that makes them a perfect match for each other. While George longs for the train whistle for adventure, Clarence longs for the ringing bell so that he can finally have his wings. Much like George's relationship with Mary, they help one another. What starts as a confused, confrontational relationship blossoms into one full of deep appreciation and gratitude. Now, I've talked about the joys and happiness that are spread throughout It's a Wonderful Life, but that's really only about half of the movie. Beneath this story's warm exterior lies a darker theme of self-worth and eventually taking one's own life. George's problems nearly all come from one place, or should I say one man. Henry Potter. Potter is played infuriatingly well by Lionel Barrymore. Let me just say, this guy is one son of a bitch. Henry Potter is the fiscally richest man in Bedford Falls and the chairman of the I Hate the Baileys fan club. Throughout the film, his sole mission is to make money and control the town. When he's first introduced, Clarence literally remarks,
Who's that? A king?
Potter sees the Baileys as poor businessmen, who are the last vestige of hope for the town of Bedford Falls residents to turn to for financially comfortable lives. There are 3 key times where George really sticks it to Potter. Once when he's a kid,
You're the biggest man in town. Bigger than him. Bigger than everybody.
then after his father
I don't know
dies,
what you're talking about something you can't get your fingers on, and it's galling you. That's what you're talking about. I know.
and when he's offered a job by
Okay,
Potter when
Mr.
he's in
Potter.
debt. But what I find most interesting about the conflict between George and Potter is that while it is somewhat based on personal vendettas, it's really a fight for the soul of Bedford Falls. Potter feels like the devil, constantly trying to win over and buy out everyone so that he can have control over all of Bedford Falls. It's his relentless campaign that almost drives George over the edge, having him wish that he was never born. We get to see exactly what would happen if George wasn't there, if he wasn't standing in opposition to Potter's hedonistic ways. The quaint, homely town of Bedford Falls becomes Pottersville. Gone are the family-owned businesses and happy people, replaced by bars, casinos, and drunks, all running wild. We've spent the entire film building up this idealistic place full of wonderful characters, and once that's turned on its head, we're spiraling alongside George. Even in this nightmare reality, Mary, his one constant source of stability, his rock, is unable to help him. Seeing George long for her while she looks at him in unrecognizable horror is heartbreaking.
Don't do this to me, please, Mary. Help me. Where's our kids? I need you, Mary. Help me.
Everything leads to the point where George is back at the bridge, begging Clarence.
Help me, Clarence. Get me back. Get me back. I don't care what happens to me. Get me back to my wife and kids. Help me, Clarence, please. Please. I want to live again. Please, God, let me live again.
This is about the part of the movie where I just start bawling my eyes out and I don't stop until well after the movie is over. When George is surrounded by his friends and family that Mary has gathered in support of him at his time of ultimate need. It is one of the most profoundly moving moments in cinema history.
Good idea, Ernie. A toast. To my big brother, George, the richest man in town.
After the last 2 years, Jesus fucking Christ, it's been 2 years of this shit. I think we can all sympathize with the feeling of not knowing what our lives have become. The feeling of being trapped, unable to fulfill what we wanted to accomplish. I've watched It's a Wonderful Life at least once a year ever since I graduated high school. It was the first time its plot really resonated with me. With each year, each viewing, I seemed to sympathize more and more with the character of George Bailey. And look, I'm not saying I'm the genuinely wonderful guy who's sacrificed as much as he has, but I can't help but feel companionship in his dread. Like many, my work-life relationship has been an interesting thing to navigate since this all started. The genuine stress that has seeped its way into nearly every facet of my life has impacted me tremendously. The drive and time that I once had to make these videos, to make things that bring me joy, is gone. I found myself scared of writing, scared of failing because the never-ending pressure I put on myself. Stretching myself thin, isolating myself, making it impossible to live up to the goals I want to achieve. I look at George Bailey's expression in his crisis, and I see my face. And it's sad. So, what did I do in my time of crisis? I watched my favorite movie. I sat on my couch, and I laughed, and I cried, experiencing what felt like every emotion for the 2-hour and 10-minute runtime. Like I said, each year I take away more from this absolute masterpiece. And this year, I took away the most blatant and pivotal message of the film. Take a deep breath. No man who has friends is a failure or alone. To say that I had an epiphany when George is running through the town screaming, "Merry Christmas!" would be an understatement, as George is surrounded by his family and friends who come to bring donations to help him out of his debt. I saw my family, my friends. I have met so many incredible people through YouTube, from Doug to Mithy to Troy, Cole, Dallas, Christian, Keanu. I can't even name you all. But my point is that I've realized that they've been there the whole time. My friends and family have kept me grounded, kept me sane. It's because of them that I'm able to push through my self-doubt and realize that I can move at my own pace, and that despite everything that happens during it, it's still a wonderful life. Happy holidays, everyone, and a happy new year. Thank you so much for watching. As I mentioned, It's a Wonderful Life is one of my all-time favorites. I knew that I wanted to cover it, but I didn't know if I was ready to do it justice. But after a lot of thought, I knew that this was the perfect video to both end out the year and get back into making videos. Thank you to everyone who stuck with the channel while I've been gone. And if you're new here, please consider subscribing and dropping a like on the video. There's so much fun stuff I'm looking forward to cover in 2022. I'm unbelievably excited to share that with you guys. Once again, I want to give a massive shout out and thank you to my friends Doug, Mithy, Troy, Cole, Dallas, Christian, and Keanu. I love you guys immensely and thank you for everything. If you're somehow not subscribed to them, please go and do so. Links are down in the description. I hope everyone had a safe, happy holiday season with their loved ones, and continue to stay safe as we roll into the new year. I'll see you guys again real soon.